Thank you. I feel compelled to address this from the start. There's a 0% chance I'm going to sound even 5% as smart as what we just heard. So I noticed and I realized that Darren, I think very purposely put me between Amber and Ruben. When I look back and see, have any of you know how like when you're at a really fine restaurant and in between the courses, they serve the sherbet to cleanse the palate? Well, actually, we're educators, right? So you know how you see on movies of like the rich people who they get the sherbet? So I am your sherbet. And thank you. That's as profound as it's going to get. So tweet that. That's the quote you get. I am your sherbet, and that's it. So we just go from here and we see what happens. So yeah, part of my job, well, my job entails kind of multiple areas. And one of those areas is school communications. And I want to talk a little bit about that. As soon as you start saying school communications, a lot of times, a lot of educators start thinking, okay, let me get on Twitter, let me check my email, let me see where else I can be mentally. And I understand that. And I want to talk today about just how important that is. But before I do that, two other parts of my job specifically deal with technology and innovative learning. I'm very, very passionate about a lot of things. I have a lot of passions. And Patrick Lencioni says if you have too many priorities, you have no priorities. And I hope that's not the same about passions, because I'm very passionate about a lot of things in education, about the affordances that we're providing for our students through the learning experiences. And one area that I think sometimes we don't think enough about is how we tell our story. What stories are we telling? How are we sharing the good work that's happening throughout our buildings and throughout our areas? And so, as I say here, it builds and moves people to agency and advocacy. And so the idea of agency and empowering our students, I love that thought of providing students and our teachers and our staff and our community with agency, with the idea that they're empowered to be able to take ownership of that. I love that thought. And I want us and our work to move everyone internally, externally toward this idea of advocacy, to advocate for our kids. I want you to think about just for a minute. Can you think of any job in a school district that doesn't have its purpose set in making a better experience for kids? And if you can say yes to that right now, maybe some of the things you're thinking of, you default to some of the business aspects of a school district. When you think about that, every part of your district should function and serve to provide better experiences for kids. Because even in the business office, even in a place like people who are preparing checks and writing checks, what are they doing? They're providing an opportunity for you to be able to employ people and pay the people to keep the people. Right? So they're providing opportunity for your staff to stay and your staff to provide experiences for your kids. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I want you to keep that in your mind. I want you to keep this idea of every part of who we are, every fiber of our being as an educational institution is about providing opportunities for our kids. And I want to ask you a question. It's a really simple question, 3 words, 3 letters each word. I want you to think about this question: who are you? And I actually want you to, I see some of you are like me, when you come to a conference like this, you really separate yourself from other people, so you're all by yourself. So in the event you have to talk to somebody, you're very sheltered by the space around you. And maybe you really do need to think a lot about this question and spend some time talking with yourself about who you are. For the rest of you who are around people, I'd like for you to take about 15, 20 seconds. Actually, we'll take 40 seconds because it needs to go reciprocated. I want you to answer this question to the people around you. Who are you? So find someone right next to you around you. Answer this question right now. Who are you? All right, I've done a very, very dangerous thing. Right here, I've allowed you to start talking, which, is very risky because the risk is I'll never get you back. All right, you've started and now you're gone. It's a very interesting question, right? Who are you? Now it can be asked, who are you? Or who are you? Or however you want to add the inflection. That question, who are you? Think about your answer. Did you start off with your name? How many of you started off with your name as who are you? Okay, how many of you early on talked about what you do? So what you do, hi, I'm Ben Gray, I'm Chief Innovation Officer, a little bit, I'm a father. We start talking about these things of our identity. And we start working on who we are. When you think about this question, think about how nuanced that question really is, how many layers that question is. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Flight, and okay, it's not really a spoiler alert, but if you haven't seen the movie Flight and you really want to see it, plug your ears and hum something. But I do want to say, right before I flew out here, I watched the movie Flight, so I was finishing up in the airport, and that may say something about my personality if I would watch that movie right before I fly. I'm either incredibly dumb or I'm that bold and brazen that I would watch that kind of a film before coming out. But at the end of that movie, one of the characters, so I'll try not to ruin anything, one of the characters asked the other character, "Who are you?" And the character said, that's a really good question. When we think about that, who are we? And if I ask that question of you as your institution, can you answer, who are you as a school, as a district, in your classroom? Have you identified who you are and what your purpose is and what you're doing? Because once you identify who you are, then the next step becomes, okay, so what's your story? What is your story that you have to tell? Because so many districts don't tell their story. And by you not telling your story, that tells a story to your public. The absence of story is a story unto itself. And that says a lot about who we are. If we're not telling the things that we need to tell, sharing the things we need to share, inspiring people, making people realize, and moving them toward awareness and advocacy in our buildings. This is a great quote. Since our research, I'm breaking every rule of presentations, returning to you and reading off of the slides. So here, you know what? I'm going to do this right here. I'm not going to break the rule. I'm going to read it right here. Rule has not been broken officially, okay? All right. Our research in districts, large, small, and in between, shows a consistent pattern of thought from patrons. Talk to me about what interests me, not about what interests you. And this is so schools that do tell their story, we start telling and focusing on the stories of things that are really important to us. I said at the beginning, I'm very passionate about a lot of things, but I also realize that my passions aren't everyone else's passions. The things that I feel very strongly about are not always those things that people in our community feel really strongly about. One of the things I'm most proud of the work we've done this year is we've started what we call Leadership Academy. And we've brought in all of our principals, our building principals. We have 14 buildings. So all of our building principals, all of our assistant principals, all of our coordinators, directors, everyone in our district who's administrator, we've brought them in, and we're doing a Leadership Academy specifically focused on technology and 21st century learning, changing the narrative of the way we teach and learn in our district. So we're doing 7 full-day sessions with our full leadership team. We're partnering with Scott McLeod, who's coming in to work with us in the 7 full-day sessions, and I do 7 more 2-hour follow-up sessions. So we've had 63 hours with each individual administrator in our school, or will have by the end of this year. I'm so proud of that. But you know what? The majority of our parents, the majority of the people in our district, well, I really want to share that story with them. That may not be in there and likely is not in their area of interest. When we talk about the things that are important to us and we move into an assumption that this is really important that other people need to think about, we really impair our ability to tell our story. Because a lot of our parents have a different level or a different interest than we have. And you can see this personified in so many school districts. Because a lot of times the Board of Education, let's be honest and frank, the Board of Education, the superintendents, the administration, they shape the stories of the district. And they like to share, rightfully so, they're very passionate and very interested in the things they're interested in, but those are the stories they're sharing. And they're talking to people about it. And if you live in a district who does this and shares news with you about the details of finance, about the details of a tax levy, about the details of things that just becomes noise to you. They've done a lot of research, and they say on average a person is bombarded with about 3,000 messages a day. People trying to get attention. People want your attention. People are vying for your attention. And as a school district, we're one of those entities. We're trying to get into people's awareness. But we do that not by telling people what we think is so important to us, what we're very caught up in. We do that by finding out where they're at, what are the things they want to know, and how can we share that story with them. If you've not read this book, I recommend it for any school leader. It's the School Communication That Works. And Ken says, is this important to your stakeholders, or is it just important to you? And that sets the foundation for the stories that you're going to tell. Because the question is, what are those stories? You have incredible stories in your district. You have amazing things that are happening and going on. But are you focused on telling those stories, or are you more focused on sharing data about some of the minutia that happens in a district? Because I said at the beginning, every bit of who we are should be to support students. And we get caught up in the operations of, look, we've been really fiscally responsible. And, look, we just made a decision about school uniforms, and we're saving 25% on school uniforms this year. And we really start telling a narrative that's not reflective of what's happening with our kids. I'm a parent. I have a 4-year-old son. I actually just turned 5-year-old son. And I have a 15-month-old daughter. And right now we're going through that great exercise of what do we do with our son next year for school? Because we live in a school district, unfortunately, that has a lot of issues. It's very difficult. 35 kids in a kindergarten classroom. It's not very enticing for us to think about sending my son there. So I think a lot about what do I want to hear from my school district where I live? What are the messages I hope they're sending to me about the quality of the education, about the concerns they have, but also about the opportunities that my son will have? I want to share some of the examples. Now, I'm in an interesting position this year. I started July 1st. I started in the district, and so we're in the process of building this. And I'm excited because some of the ideas I'm going to share, some of the thoughts, they're in process of being made, and when you look back 6 months from now, I'm excited to be able to share where we will go as a district on the journey that we're moving on. But I'll share some of the work I did at my previous district where I worked for 3 years as the chief information officer doing similar work with communications. One of the things to think about are the stories of your district families. And are you telling the stories of how and what is happening in your district with your families, with your students, with your parents, and the connections they're making to you? Because like I said, a lot of times with communication, we're thinking in terms of what we want to share, what's important to us. And we miss our message, or we miss our mark, if we don't think in terms of what does the person want to receive? What do they want to hear? I guess it'd be similar to when I walked over here from the hotel. I was walking, and I was in my suit, and I'm thinking, I fit into Portland. Okay, so there's a disconnect, right? If that's my thought, there's like reality, and then there's that side of it. And again, that's what happens sometimes is we think that message hit. People are really excited about this side of our superintendent's performance, our strategic plan, our things that, I'd ask you, when you were in school, can you remember any of your school board members' names? Yeah. Can you remember your superintendent's name when you were in school? Can you remember your building principal? Maybe we're getting warmer, right? So this is not an indictment necessarily in what's happening, nor does it minimize the importance of those roles, because understand those roles are so key and critical, because a great superintendent and a great board will move you and your district to amazing places. They'll set a vision, and they'll set a direction, and you'll go in incredible places. We all know that, don't we? We've worked for probably both sides of this. You've probably worked for a great building principal or a great leader who was unbelievably empowering and set you on an incredible path, and then we've worked for the opposite side of that, people who minimized our value, who really diminished what we can add and what we can do with our students. And so we want to make sure that we're thinking in terms of how do we connect? How do we tell those things? I want to show you a short example. I'm going to show you a few examples here. They're all short. As a side note, this is for free. Okay, so as a side note, if you're making videos or movies, and I promise this, hopefully this will not be like the experience when your neighbor says, hey, you want to come over to see my vacation videos? And you're like, no, not at all. Like, not even a little bit, because they show you like 45 minutes of their vacation, their photos. And they'll be like, oh, that one's blurry, that one's no good. Oh, look at this, like 8 shots of the same thing over and over again, and this is where Billy got sick, and this is where, and it completely dilutes the power of the story. So one practical note, when you're telling your stories, make them concise. Don't think I've got to tell a 6, 7, 8 minute video story, because you're only diluting the power of your message. As I said, there's so many different people and places and entities vying and competing for the attention of your audience. You want to grab their attention, you want to keep it, you want to honor their time, and honor the fact that they even are there to watch the story you have to sell or share with them, because you're not trying to sell. You're not trying to sell them anything. You're sharing a story. So hopefully you won't have that experience where you're like, okay, that was too long, that was okay, whatever. With our videos, in this video in particular, this was from the previous district I worked, and about 10 years ago, we had a student at our middle school who was diagnosed with cancer in his leg. And our school community, it really touched a lot of our teachers, a lot of our staff, a lot of our students. And they got involved in Make-A-Wish. And they said, we want to do something for this student. We want to provide something for him. And so this whole movement started, and it still continues today. Every year that middle school does they do a fundraiser effort. They work together and they raise about $30,000 a year for Make-A-Wish. They can grant about 7 or 8 wishes. And this video here was the first one that we made that talks about and tells the story of our Make-A-Wish efforts. And what you're not going to get, so the beginning part of this video starts out telling the story of Brad, who is the student who had cancer. He did lose his battle with cancer about 3 years after the diagnosis. So it talks about Brad, and then it talks about Caitlin, who is a young girl who has moya moya, which is a condition where she'll get a lot of strokes, and she has Downs. And so this portion of the video, the beginning of it talks about these students and talks about what they're experiencing, what's happening with them. And then we transition into the wish that they have. So this part of the video is just sharing their wish. And I'll explain a little bit more about the video after you watch it.
Caitlin's wish was to go to Florida because she absolutely loves princesses, and she is a princess. Yeah. So we got to go to Florida and go to a nice hotel, and they brought her a princess dress to wear because she was going to have dinner in the castle with Cinderella. So we got to do that, and we got to see Mickey and Minnie, and so we had fun. Yeah. I know. Yeah, you know.
It took him a long time to make a decision, but he finally picked a fishing boat. Brad loved to fish, and he was so thrilled when he got his boat. It was the Bass Federation out in Morris, Illinois, and they greeted us with a crowd of people, and everything was just so joyous, and he was just thrilled. At the time he received his boat, he was in a wheelchair, but we wheeled him in, and they just treated him like he was the king of the world that day. It was wonderful.
So what I'm really proud about with that video was the fact that that was one of the first videos we did, and there are all kinds of technical problems with that video. But that wasn't the point of the video, was it? It wasn't the quality, or it wasn't the fact that I blew it on the mic on one of the interviews and I had to use the mic off the camera, and there were all these things that I was frustrated with. It was the power of the story. So when you share your story, any stories at all, the stories drive what you're doing and what you're making. And in this case, we had this video. It went on to, actually they aired it on our local cable channel, and they were showing it, and people could relate and understand about the efforts that we were doing. We brought an awareness to the community about the work that we're doing with our kids and how proud we were of that. Because for 7 years, people heard about it, and they got news clippings, and there were stats of we raised this, this much money and did these things. But when we put a story to it and shared it out, just the power of what that did for people in connecting with us and realizing what our kids can do and what they're capable of. The next video I want to show is the stories. Are you telling the stories of your community connection? So that was directly tied to what was happening with their parents. The next piece is these community connections. What are you doing to go out and share your story about how your kids are being active and helping other people in a broader sense? So the first one really dealt with people within and within our families. And beyond that, what's interesting about this is I'm sure all of you have efforts in your district where you are doing things for your community and you don't realize just how significant that is. When we called this principal, this is one that we just recently did, we called the principal and said they do this food drive. And we said, we'd love to make a video about this and be able to share this story. And he said, oh, really? It's not that big of a deal. And I think that's what people think. And you may think that in your own district is, well, we're doing this, but it's not really that big of a deal. We're doing this, and it's not really this major production, but the story it will tell really is. So I'll show this one.
I think students at any age, but especially the elementary level, if you can help instill in them the value of providing for others, of being responsible for your community and doing things within the community to make it a better place to live, will really help them understand that what we're trying to accomplish here and being good citizens in our city and our world.
We donated like about 1,000 cans, so which basically means that would help a lot more people.
Well, we've been doing this food drive at Devonshire for, I believe, the last 4 years. We've collected for the last 3 years well over 1,000 cans.
The Self-Help Closet and Pantry is located at 600 East Algonquin Road on the northeast corner of Wolf and Algonquin. My name is Debbie Waluziak. I'm the executive director. I think young people that volunteer in some way, when they become adults, they will be more inclined to volunteer if they've started that way, if they've been raised with that mindset.
The kids are very excited about it. We talk to the food pantry and they give us a list of some of the items that they're a little bit short on this time of the year, and we make sure our families are aware of that, and then the kids have about 2 weeks to bring items in. Each year it gets a little bigger and a little better.
I think a food drive is really important because we could help the people in need. We mostly have everything, but other people, they don't really have food and like clothes, so they need that stuff.
This is outreaching to everybody in the community, not just a particular or certain particular families. This goes to everybody, and it is very important to help the needy families because some of us have so much and some of us have nothing.
And the last piece I want to share is, or one of the last videos is, this is an idea I'm very, very excited about because we talk about connections about your staff. And are you helping your community connect with who your staff are? So this is a concept, I'll kind of show you the pilot episode, I guess, of it in a way. We're doing a series called 59 and 59. Since we're District 59, we're doing 59 second shorts about our district staff. So this first one we did, the first concept we did was on our superintendent. And now we're going to do these kind of stories regularly with all different people within our organization. For staff members, actually the first couple we're going to roll out to make public will be on teachers, and then we'll use this one from our superintendent. We want to get every different person with every different kind of role and job, and just have people connect with who we are as people. Not just talk about, well, in education I believe, but give a face and a name and have people realize who we are. So I'll show this one, the last video that I'll show.
The exciting thing about a leadership role is the opportunity to work with a group of teachers and other leaders to plan and create better opportunities for kids. I'm Art Fessler, Superintendent of Schools for School District 59. I enjoy spending time with my wife and 5 children. I also enjoy many sports, playing basketball, golfing, and riding mountain bikes. Getting out on the trail is a great way to not only get a workout, but relieve some of the stressors of the job. I believe that the most important aspect of our job as educators and leaders is to prepare kids to be successful for life. To see a group come together for a common purpose and work diligently toward that goal is rewarding.
So what I love so much about that series it's not just our superintendent saying, this is what I believe about education. It's allowing people to connect with him as a person. And we're working on one right now of one of our staff members, and just being able to share with people that personal level of what we believe and who we are. And then putting that onto a place. Just for the sake of time, I'll skip over. This was just a quick picture that is interesting. We had a building next door to our district office, and we purchased that land because it went for sale. It was this banquet hall, this really big banquet hall. We bought the land, and typically what you would expect would be, well, why are you buying the land? Questions that you may have. And we did a story right away where we allowed the local fire departments to come in and run search and rescue practice. And they allowed us to come in for a day, and we took this picture and a couple other pictures, and the newspaper picked it up, and just those little unexpected moments that you have to tell these stories too. Because day in and day out, things will happen in your school, in your district, in your classrooms. They're unexpected, but in a really good way. And are you sharing those pieces that are happening? And then, finally, where are you telling your stories? Do you have a place dedicated for where it is that you're sharing this? Share a concept. We're in the middle. If you go to our website right now, I promise you it doesn't look like this right now. This is our website mock-up that we're going to be implementing. And as I said before, you come back in 6 months. If you go to ccsd59.org right now, unfortunately, it's like the reason why you do want to focus on redesigning. I wish that wasn't the case, but right now, if you ever want an example of like, here's why it's important, feel free, please, use us. You have about 6 months, okay? There's your warning. But after that, when you go to our site, what we want very purposely is we want who we are and what we're about to be central and paramount. So when you come to our site, we want images of our kids to be the most striking thing that you see. And then we want these featured stories in the lower left. We'll have a featured story of what's happening, but then we also have this Our Stories button. And so here's one of the difficulties of turning in your slides really early for presentation. You think of things you want to say later on, and then you don't get to send them to Darren. So I want to read this one quote real quick. This is so interesting to me. So in thinking about interfaces, that your public will interface with you and your information. Listen to this quote. One of the best ways to restore faith in government is to create interfaces to government services that are simple, beautiful, and easy to use. And what's so interesting about that, this is the CTO of the White House, just prior to the healthcare.gov thing. So good job, guys. You did it. But really, if you think about it, have you had an experience with the website that was so frustrating? I can say for Illinois, that's our state board of education, our ISB site, is you don't know where you're going or what's happening, or I just want to enter my professional development credentials and I cannot figure out how to do that anywhere, and it's frustrating. I went on the other day on AT&T and I tried to figure out, okay, if I want to change my plan and I want to add a line or whatever, it was so maddening, I just quit. I said, I can't, there's no way I'm going to figure out this formula of this new, these new promotions they have running and these new features. That will quickly work to deteriorate trust with your public. And so our goal here is to make it simple, to make people want to come back. So often in education, we wear poor design, poor websites like a badge of honor. This is terrible, but it's free. We didn't spend any money on this piece of garbage. Great. I don't often buy garbage. I don't usually spend any money on the garbage. I'm trying to get rid of it, right? Not trying to get it into my house. And I don't mean to be so blunt, but really, honestly, it's so true. If you have a website that you have to apologize for, that you go and you show people and say, I'm sorry, it's so hard. We don't want that. We want people to be proud of every single thing that we do. And so our goal is when you click on the Our Stories, the window will pop up and we'll have stories that will draw people in. These are pictures of our kids, of our teachers, of sharing these pieces with people in a way that makes them want to come back. I'll end with this. Each one of you has an amazing, compelling, incredible story about who you are, about what you believe in education, about the opportunities you provide. And your schools and your district and the work you do with kids is so inspirational. Are you sharing that? Are you sharing that in a way that would make people want more of it? And I could certainly talk to you about the technical details of how we made the videos and how we certainly want to try to create a certain standard and style. And that's the wild thing about the day we live in right now is, 10 years ago to create those videos, it would have cost us about $150,000 just for a camera of that quality. And now, the cameras that we have with the capabilities of what they have, you can do this. And I hope that you do it, because it'll mean a lot for your kids. Because moving people to awareness will absolutely move them towards advocacy, which is what we want. Thank you.